Hello everyone. So today our topic of discussion would be fluvial landforms, and here we are going to discuss that how the river moves from its youth stage to mature stage and then to the old stage, and the landforms which are formed by the river during its course. So moving on to the upper spur. Spur is the movement of the river changes its direction. Like we can see in this example, the river channel is not straight. This is not straight because whenever there is some hard rock, it changes its direction. It changes its direction of flow whenever there is some hard rock in the path of it. So this structure or the landform is known as spur, or we can call it interlocking spur. We can see that the river is not flowing straight. If the rocks are harder in those region, it get turns this way. If the rock is harder in this thing, it turns this way. So it changes its direction as per the rocks present there. Now looking at the portholes, it is when the river starts to corrodate vertically. Let's say there are some rocks present here which can be corroded by the river. It means they are not that much harder that river cannot corrode. The rocks present can be corroded by the river. So when the potholes present in the water and some rocks present in the water, by the process of aberration, it means the big rocks when rubbed with each other, big rocks when rubbed with the potholes present here, they start to corrode it. And these type of potholes would be formed in the upper reaches of river. It is because of the presence of potholes and these rocks. When they collide with each other, they start to form these potholes, and there the flow would be turbulent because of this energy. So this turbulent flow also helps in the formation of potholes. Moving ahead, waterfalls. Waterfalls are formed because of the presence of some harder rocks in the region and some softer rocks in the region. So if the rocks are not much harder, it can be easily corroded by the river. But if it's harder, then they cannot be corroded by the river. If we are looking at this channel of the river, we can see that this much the softer rocks are present here. These rocks are softer, but the rocks which are present above it is harder. So the one which is softer is already corroded by the river. The water flow is here, they have already corroded this much amount of rocks, but the rocks which are harder cannot be corroded by river. So that's why these rocks are already corroded. That's why the harder rocks is not corroded, the water falls from this place. So this waterfall is mainly created by the difference in the rock structures, difference in the physical properties of rocks. This plunge pool is created because the rocks are fallen down here from various places, like by the broken rocks from various places. These rocks would be collected here. And some rapids would also be formed. Rapids are just vertical waterfalls due to the difference in the physical properties of rocks only. So there are various processes which helps in the erosion. There are abrasion. If it is abrasion, it means that the large rocks present here, when they will rubbed with the pebbles present in the water, it helps to corrode the rocks. Similar way, if attrition is there, then the two rocks will be rubbed and help in the collision. Solution is because of the chemical properties, and hydraulic action is by the action of water when the rocks get corroded. So these are the processes which help in the corrosion and creation of various landforms in the upper reaches of the river. So now the mature stage of river. While the river starts to move into the mature stage, we can see that the roughness of the channel reduces because in the very higher reaches or the upper reaches of river, we have very rough channel as the rocks are more harder. So as the rocks become comparatively less harder, it helps in the movement of water comparatively faster. Its velocity increases. So the roughness of the channel reduces, and that's why it widens the channel. Now the river starts to widen its channel. The channel is comparatively smaller in the upper reaches, but now in the mature state it start to widen it. So that's why we can see that the water flow is more efficient, which helps in increasing the velocity, and the roughness of the channel reduces, which also helps in increasing the velocity in the mature stage. Now we can look at the landforms which are formed in the mature stage, and those are, first one is meander. Meander is that the river is not flowing straight. It follows some zigzag like motion here. Why the motion is curvilinear? Answer to this lies in various factors, and the factors can be that the river has to balance its energy. As we can say that velocity is increasing and the bed load is also increasing because the channel is large. Now it can corrode more part of the land, due to which more sediments are there, more rocks are there to carry with the river. So if bed load is increasing, and discharge which is carried by the river is increasing, more energy is there, velocity is also more, but it has to carry more load. So it has to decide that what load can be carried easily at this point of time with the amount of energy which it have at this time. So but it is hard for it to carry all the sediments with it. That's why it left some sediments here and just changes its flow to other way, so that it do not carries all the sediments, all the rocks which it had in its channel with it further. There are many other extrinsic factors which work on it, like the gradient of the channel. Let's say if the gradient is very less, it is hard for it to carry the all sediments, so it will keep the sediments there and move on. So the roughness of the channel and the gradient also helps to decide that what will be the shape of the meander, and how much the river is going to meander to move on, because it cannot carry all the sediments with the amount of energy it has at that time. Added as its channel is widened very much, because rocks are not hard to corrode in this region, so it has widened this channel. So how much it is corroding, it is harder for it to carry all the sediments further on with it. That's why it is start to meander, and if the flow is very high, then these parts will be cut and this will be joined by this part of the river. Let's say the river flows at very high speed, then the river will start to flow this way, and this part will be left as this way. This is known as oxbow lake. Due to very high flow of the river, it means very high energy and velocity, which make it to flow straight and leaving this part of the river, that is known as oxbow lake. And then the other part is natural levees. Natural levees means that the sediments which are being left by the river while moving from while moving in its mature stage. As we know that it do not have efficient energy to carry all the sediments which it had, so that's why it leaves the sediments. As we know that it has widened its channel very much, which increases the friction also here. So if the friction is increased here, so it must have reduced the velocity and thereby the energy of the river and its ability to take the sediments with it, as you've seen in meander also. So it is hard for it to take all the sediments with it. That's why it deposits the sediments here and moves on, and these sediments which are deposited by the river in its path, that is known as levees. And if it is during the floodplain or by the river naturally, then it is known as natural levees. So these are the various landforms which are formed by it. These are the bedrocks of the channel, and this much large channel the river now have. It means normally it is flowing this way, but if water flow is more, it can take this much larger region in its flow. Back swamp is the water left by it during its flow. Moving ahead, we can see that how the lateral erosion take place. In the upper reaches, we have seen that how the river does vertical erosion. This is V-shaped valleys. But if it is moving this way, lateral erosion, because the rocks are easier to corrode, it corrodes them and moves up further. These are all the stages. Let's say in the upper reaches, how the river moves. In the mid, how the river moves. Meandering, oxbolic formation, natural levees deposition, and this is how the river forms the distributed in the old stage. We will be looking at the older stage now. Now looking at the old stage of river. In the old stage, rivers start to form the deltas. So in case of a Niger river, we can say the arcuate type of delta, means it is formed of arc shaped. Why the rivers form delta in the old stage? Because the velocity of the river decreases here, thereby energy also decreases, and it is harder for the river to carry all the sediments, rocks, pebbles with it further on towards the oceans, so it deposits the sediments in the form of delta. If the delta is of arc shape like that of Niger river or of Ganges river, we call it arcuate delta. And if the delta is like this shape, it is straight flow deposition. We can see here straight flow deposition. Then this type of delta is known as cuspate delta. It is formed by the Ebro river. The other example is bird food delta, which is formed by the Mississippi river, because here in this case the river's velocity is more than the velocity of the waves of the ocean. That's why the deposition here in the in the form of the bird food, it's not uniform this way. It is like the shape of bird food. At the river speed is river water speed is good here. That's how the deltas are formed in the old stage of river. The next one is if in any case there is the rejuvenation of the river. It means that by any chance if there is fall in the sea level. So how can the sea level can fall? It's because if there is some ice, deposition is there, ice formation is there in the ocean. So or we can say that by some tectonic activities, if we have observed that there is some fall in the sea level, if some fall in the sea level is observed, then it will definitely lead to the rise in the landmass nearby to it. And if there is some rise in the landmass near to it, it is at these nick points. So if we have observed some fall in the sea level, then definitely a rise in the landmass. The landmass of these points is known as nick points. So here we can see some rise. So if this rise has taken place, then after the old stage of the river, it can further enter into the youth stage. As this rise now, as this rise happens, now the river will be in those stages of youth where it has the capability of corroding the river, forming V-shaped valleys and also rapids, waterfalls, these river terraces, and further on the formation of meanders and such landforms which is it has already formed in the youth stage. So this is how rivers first goes from youth stage to the mature stage and to old stage, and then further if any rejuvenation activity has occurred due to the fall in the sea level, it can further go into those stages, those use stages, mature stages and old stages. The cycle will again start. The cycle will go on if there is some tectonic activities or some fall in sea level is observed. This is how all the landforms of the fluvial activities, or we can say the river landforms, are formed. I hope you understand the video well. Thank you for watching.